Is Bart the Genius secretly one of the best Simpsons Father's Day episodes? Or at least by Homer and Bart standards? I acknowledge Lisa tends to dominate this category. But when I think about what makes Bart the Genius truly special, it always comes back to that relationship story. When you think about it, this doesn't have to have a Homer-Bart element to it. At its basic level, this seems to be your standard liar-revealed plot, set within the Springfield Elementary school system. Bart cheats on a test, Bart gets in way over his head, Bart admits the truth. Very clean, very academics-focused. It's like their first run at Bart Gets an F. But whereas that episode explores Bart's inner character and what makes him tick, Bart the Genius pivots toward relationship drama. We end up getting the best of both worlds here. First, let's examine the school side of the story. This was the very first Springfield Elementary plot, introducing Edna Krabappel and Martin Prince, and truly establishing the Bart-Skinner dynamic. Look, this is where that pathetic meme comes from. Even in her debut, Mrs. Krabappel mostly feels like the Krabappel we know and love. She's not quite as snappy and harsh as later incarnations, less sick of it all. She speaks a bit slower here, but we do get some of that classic Krabappel whiplash. But I think Martin really steals the show in Act 1. I love how aggressive this early version is, narking on their graffiti and reminding Krabappel that Bart needs to rotate his desk, then finishing early and going outside to taunt him. Who is this guy? Later Martin would never ever do this. He evolved into a more passive bullying target. Whereas here, the writers do a great job of establishing him as that annoying pain in the ass, where we don't mind Bart screwing him over. I don't think this plot beat would work as well with Season 2 Martin. The whole setup flows extremely well. The major stumbling block of this concept is that, of course, the school would be skeptical of Bart suddenly being a genius. There's no reason for them to send him to gifted school because Skinner is never gonna buy this. He won't. It's stupid. So they use this opening graffiti both to establish Martin as the annoying antagonist and to demonstrate why Skinner would look the other way. It's pretty slick. Although they really did recycle this plot point in The Crepes of Wrath now that I think about it, but I like it much better here. The gifted school side of this deception is much less convincing. Ms. Milan has to quickly realize that something is wrong here, right? To their credit, they write this place unstructured and free-flowing enough where you think, maybe Bart can bullshit his way through this. I mean, the philosophy and ethics debate don't go that well for him, and Milan is thoroughly unconvinced. But it's not like they subjected the audience to a montage of Bart being objectively wrong over and over again. If they did that, the story would quickly fall apart. This way, they can satirize the sort of woo-woo gifted school creativity bent and put Bart in a situation with some wiggle room to maneuver. Let's start with the more open-ended philosophy discussion, and then hit us with the rigid calculus and chemistry lessons later. You can't bullshit chemistry. I love this ethics discussion so much. The way it's storyboarded, showing all the kids listening so intently, them earnestly offering up their little paradoxes. Earlier, during their intros, Bart just being like, "What's your problem?" to the backward phonetics guy. Honestly, I don't blame Bart here. Introducing yourself in palindromes and backward phonetics is so insufferable and pretentious. Here's a paradox for you. To demonstrate your mastery of the English language, you must make yourself incomprehensible. I have to admit, the gifted school scenes, especially the lunchroom, do trigger me a bit on a personal level, because I had sort of a similar experience to Bart in this episode. Story time. My school district had a program where all the gifted students got bused to one specific elementary school. The one that happened to be 2 blocks away from my house. But I wasn't gifted. The 4th and 5th grades were literally half regular students, half gifted. And the smart kids would go off to their special class every afternoon. So I did see this dynamic firsthand, where the gifted students constantly condescended to their peers. It was so weird. I am sure we were all damaged psychologically because of it. It never got to this point. No one was tricked into giving away their lunch. But this inverted joke about these smart kid bullies does ring true to me. It's a pointed observation about gifted school dynamics, the competitiveness and the one-upsmanship of it. while throwing Bart into a sucky, bizarre world. Even socially, he can't hang. Who would have thought that surrounding yourself with Martins wouldn't be any fun? They underline this with the schoolyard scene, where his old crew tells him to get lost. Wow, even Lewis gets a whole line of dialogue here. Season 1 was nuts. Reminds me a lot of that Lisa Goes to College episode later, which literally had the exact same plot point. But it works so much better here with Bart. This is the true tipping point. Like, Bart never cared about being bad at school, he's just bad at it in a new location. But his lie has placed him in this lonely void between two worlds. The school plot isn't especially deep or anything. It follows many of the typical lying liar face tropes seen in every sitcom and kids show. But it is thoughtfully constructed, where every scene allows Bart to grapple with the situation, escalating to the point that we feel just as relieved as him to finally admit the truth. Even his final manipulation, this project write-up, falls apart immediately. There might be a temptation to show some growth from Bart here, that maybe being in gifted school did push him to express himself better. But nah, Bart is who he is. He's not equipped to bullshit his way through this. The very first regular Simpsons episode is all about establishing who these guys are, and this perfectly introduces Bart. Although, maybe that's selling Bart the Genius short. I think it's an amazing introduction to the whole family. I kinda wish this was the first full-length episode, because Kwijibo is like the perfect intro scene for everyone. I love how they all played crappy 2 to 3 letter words, Lisa adding id, the dictionary propping up the sofa. Homer, you had a bingo with the X and Z letters, oh my god. Even Maggie's little E=mc² thing works for her. Every character is written flawlessly here. But, as good as Kwijibo is, it might not even be the best Simpsons family moment in this episode. This opera scene is quintessential Simpsons. If I had to pick one sequence that demonstrates the vibe of the series, the opera is a prime candidate. Just plop them into a classy context and let them go wild. Homer's silly noises, and Bart making up his own lyrics, other people annoyed at their boorish behavior. And how it's clear that Lisa is smart and knows Carmen, but is also laughing along with their antics. God, I miss bratty Lisa so much. It made sense that they tweaked her personality to be a better foil for these two. But this is an important part of her characterization, in my opinion. That Lisa is someone who appreciates highbrow art and culture, but also loves her silly, chaotic family. She is Homer's daughter. He would have great influence on her. You can draw a line from here to the ending of Lisa's wedding. Their link was established that early. Sorry to go on a Lisa tangent, as she's barely in this episode, but every moment she is, she's pitch perfect. I do feel bad for Marge in this sequence, where her only role is to be annoyed and naggy, but someone needs to perform this role in this comedy routine, and she's awesome at it. Anyway, enough Carmen, let's finally talk about Homer's role in this thing. In my opinion, this element is essential in making Bart the Genius work. Without it, it would be like a Secret War of Lisa Simpson plot. Bart enters a world where he gets in over his head and has to prove something arbitrary to the mean boys we will never see again. It wasn't convincing in Lisa's case, and it wouldn't have been here. Thankfully, Bart the Genius understands this isn't a Bart achievement story, and knows it can't hinge the whole shebang on uncovering his lie. So instead, they have Homer quietly worm his way into the narrative, giving them something substantial to latch onto in Act 3. And it's not like they go out of their way to establish Homer as a major player. Early on, he's just raging at Bart over Kwijibo and frustrated about having to pay for the graffiti. $75, get out of here. But it does set up Homer for his pivot. That, paradoxically, the most incredulous person becomes most invested in the lie. He is totally happy to drive Bart to school and offers his clip-on tie to help him fit in. This moment is the most Season 1 thing ever, but I appreciate that extra level of awkwardness. That Homer decides to kiss Bart on the forehead and proudly send him on his way. That Bart doesn't know how to react. That Homer doesn't know how to react. We're only in episode 2, and the characters are already so irony poisoned that they can't deal with this. Wow, genuine Homer Bart affection on The Simpsons. What is this? Homer's so dang supportive of Bart, checking in after his first day and telling him about the opera. That he knows his son well enough to realize that Bart's not into Marge's film festival idea and offers to play catch in the backyard. This scene would never ever be done in a later season of The Simpsons, at least not in this state. This is something you would see in a TGIF show. Two characters bonding and enjoying each other's companies for 30 seconds. No subversive jokes or anything to cut the treacle. Obviously, I like this scene because I am a schmaltzy degenerate, but I could see why others would roll their eyes. However, it does give Homer some narrative momentum, that we are truly invested in their improved relationship heading into the finale. Maybe I'm just a mark, but I do actually buy Bart's earnest plea to his father, that this kid went through so much social alienation, so much intellectual ridicule. Bart would view this little lie as creating something wonderful, this newfound bond with his father. Maybe it's a 50-50 thing, where Bart's trying to avoid getting into too much trouble, but I don't think his storyline makes sense if this was 100% a work. Either way, it's a hilarious outcome. How Homer immediately snaps back into angry mode and chases him through the house and pounds on his door. Actually, maybe that's why I don't mind how schmaltzy this earlier scene was. You really gotta set him up before exploding all that treacle. I acknowledge that there are other Homer Bart episodes that get more in depth about their father-son relationship. Saturdays of Thunder might be the biggest one, as well as the ending of Bart the Daredevil. But I think what's cool about Bart the Genius is how they paint this overall picture of their dynamic without actually calling much attention to it. They allow it to sneak up on you. Homer goes through the whole gauntlet. His frustration with his son, his skepticism, his protectiveness, his belief in him, and finishing back at frustration. Isn't this what fatherhood is all about? I don't know, I don't have any kids. But I do think about my own dad, and the various times that he would get exasperated, or all the times he was super supportive. And Bart the Genius reflects that complex gamut of emotions. Also, I just like how it ends with angry Homer. It's one of those, this is what it's all about endings that you want out of season 1. Back when I did the season rankings, I put this at only number 8, and I think that was too low. I think this is better than The Crepes of Wrath, The Telltale Head, and probably Bart the General. It's easy to sleep on Bart the Genius because it's so rudimentary. The animation is quite rough, and the story isn't exactly full of twists and turns. But it has a lot of personality and charm. It's easy to get caught up in clever joke writing and forget about a scene like the opera that is pure character-driven fun. I like that The Simpsons was willing to roll around in its sitcom roots in order to fully parody the format. Bart achieves nothing. His relationship with his dad doesn't change. It's actively defying those sitcom conventions. But it never feels like a waste of time, and they don't need to wink at the audience and get all meta about it. Bart the Genius is The Simpsons at its most pure form, and is arguably one of the most important episodes in the series. We often forget about how important episode 2 is in getting the audience hooked. If I turned on my TV in 1990 and saw Bart the Genius, I know that it would make me want to keep watching, week after week.